Welcome to today's interview. I brought on AJ Roberts. AJ, welcome.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
And you're like way across the pond. Huge time difference, but give the listeners a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
Well, I am on this call from, I won't say sunny England because it's far from it. It's been raining constantly for about 2 months. I live in the south of England, about an hour west of London, near a place called Stonehenge. Many of you might have heard about it. It's a bit of a historical landmark. I just see it as a big bunch of rocks, but whatever floats your boat. But yeah, I live in the south of England. In sort of like a country area, nice little county called Wiltshire. Yeah, I haven't lived back in England that long. I've kind of lived all around the world really. I spent majority of my life as a military brat. My stepdad was in the army, the British Army, and I then after almost making it as a professional football player or soccer player, should I say. Um, I had a bit of a nasty injury and then recovered and ended up joining the British Army myself, where I spent 15 years in the military, but living in Germany and traveling the world, and was lucky to move to Australia for 3 years as well, my family. So it was, yes, I've been about a bit, but I've kind of settled here now in the south of England and enjoying the fruits of the countryside and the best English tea in the world.
That's awesome. One thing I want to talk about, I love your background and we've already had conversations, so I know a lot more about you, but now, because you brought up living in Australia again, do you mind taking me back to that whole experience going to Australia, starting this gym, and then like kind of what happened that brought you back to England?
Yeah, sure. So I'd already been in the army for 12 years, and I'd not long come back from Afghanistan in 2012, and it was a really really kinetic tour where I was literally in firefights all the time and lost some of my guys, and at the end of it, um, well, during actually my Afghan tour, I was speaking to somebody who lived in Australia who was British, and he was saying about how he runs his own company and he was looking for a project manager. So I got speaking to him about it a bit more and said that we'd always loved the idea of living in Australia one day, and he just basically offered me there on a plate, like, well, why don't you come work for me? I was like, what? um, so obviously dug into it a bit deeper, and he was like, yeah, if you can run a site in Afghanistan, you can run a site anywhere. So we went with the flow, and then one thing led to another, and then I was out of the army and then on a plane to the Gold Coast in Australia with my wife and kids, and it was all a bit crazy really, because like obviously we've never been there before. So we basically like looked at the map and we were like, well, I'm going to be working mainly between Brisbane and the south of the Gold Coast. So we just kind of looked at the map and was like, oh yeah, we'll just get a house there, like in the middle. Just happened it was 5 minutes from all the like biggest theme parks and stuff. So we actually got quite lucky and we picked a nice little suburb. It could have been a lot worse. So yeah, that worked out all right. But after a short while out there, like after a year or so, I realised that he was quite cash flow poor, and there was months where he couldn't pay me properly, so he was clearly having to wait for invoices to come in and stuff like that. So I was kind of like, well, this is new to me, All I know in my life is that security bubble in the military, and it's just like, well, I might not have a job. I'm on the other side of the world with no real sort of help and sort of financial backing from family, like there and then, that little security blanket. But I've always been a go-getter, and I always looked for more all the time. And I've always been very much into fitness. I've been coaching for a long, long time in different disciplines. And at that point, I was quite heavily into CrossFit, and it kind of like took over the world for about 3 or 4 years, and everyone was on the CrossFit train, weren't they? And on the Gold Coast, there was literally a CrossFit gym on every corner. But I got the opportunity through an investor who was going to one of my boot camps to start my own gym, but brand it as myself and put a military spin on it. So I did, and it worked really well. People love that whole boot campy, commando type, someone in combat yelling at you, telling you to get down and eat the dirt type thing that puts on, a lot of people love. So I was like, yeah, it's a good way to put a spin on it. I think things are going really well, and I was looking at getting my original visa changed from the sponsored visa I was on with my original employer to a business one where I could then be sponsored as director. Um, then, literally out of the blue, the investor and partner decided that he was mentally unstable, just literally like that. And I was like, I was a bit taken back by it and given the benefit of the doubt at first, but then I was like, I didn't know if I believed him or not. And he literally just done a runner and had only put a third of the investment and left me high and dry with all these overheads, and no way of really sustaining it without the financial backing that he'd agreed to. And next thing, immigration would basically like, look, you haven't got your new visa, you're not working for your ex-employer, you've got to leave the country. So to avoid being an illegal immigrant, I had to literally leave Australia. My wife had to leave her job. My kids had to leave their amazing school. I had to travel back to UK, but it was a really hard pill to swallow because there was there's a good period of sort of a week every day where I'd have to stand in my garage, like selling everything we owned, my kids' toys, everything, and it was really hard. Just looking at my kids' faces, knowing that they'd have to leave like their safe haven and not knowing what we'd move back to in England because we'd have to start all over again. It wasn't like in the military, you get posted somewhere and then you already know what you're doing. When you get there, you're just living in a different house. It was really, really difficult, like, for me and my family.
So the reason I wanted you to share that backstory is because so many people go through life, they want certainty, they want stability, and there are times in life when you're going to have a lot of uncertainty and unknowns. And now that you have hindsight, how can you look back and realize that happened for me, trusting the process, and kind of like changing your perspective on everything?
No, absolutely, and I think it comes, the whole cycle comes like through life as you get older. You need to experience these highs and lows. I find that, like, my wife's from a small village and everyone knows everybody. No one ever goes anywhere. They spend at least 5 nights a week in the local pub just talking rubbish. The people don't get about anywhere. So, like, I think having those experiences in life really help, like, build the foundations of a solid mindset eventually. So having to leave all of that behind, and then the only thing we could do was move into my mum and dad's pub in England, where it was really loud, and weekends it was like everyone just outside smoking all the time. So, like, we went from a really nice sunny coastal lifestyle, healthy lifestyle, surrounded by gym goers and everything else like that, to surrounded literally by people smoking roll-up cigarettes and just drinking all the time, like, overnight. And it was a horrible culture shock. And I think I've always been trying to take the positive out of everything, absolutely everything, whether that's like a family member dying or like an injury happening, or something happening for employment. Because the way I see it, as long I'm still here breathing, I've still got a network, I've still got family, I've still got my wife and kids. There's room to grow there straight away, and learn from what happens. So when you say the answer to your question about, say, using those kind of experiences, like, to do good, the fact that going into, like, my business now, my coaching business that I run, I run it solely myself. I don't have any input from anybody else. Like, I wouldn't partner with anybody on something again unless it was like really, really solid. Whereas, like, in Australia, I was kind of like, didn't really have a choice, because it was either go with this or leave Australia. So I was everything was all kind of like dependent on what this partner could do to help me, and it's almost like they manipulate that. So I learned loads and loads of business. Well, I learned a lot of business skills, but I also learned a lot of things about business and what not to do. And the same for even running a gym. If I did it all again now, I'd do it so much differently. So I take a massive amount of lessons from that experience and use them right now. And I also I've used them many times, called upon them many times to help coaching clients, for example.
Yeah. What I love about that is a lot of people maybe who have experienced something similar to you or their own quote failures. Something I came across recently, which I absolutely love because I think failure has so much negative stigma. But
Yeah.
now if you can think of failure as a temporary defeat, and it's only a failure if you quit, if you don't learn from it and move
Hmm.
on.
Yeah. No, 100%. And like I could have easily done that. I could have just thrown the towel in and just stayed in my mum and dad's pub with my kids, who couldn't sleep at night because I think I've lost massively, and I look like a failure to friends and family on social media. And people are pointing fingers, going, "Ah, didn't work out for you." Like, "Oh, never mind, Mr. Australia." Because you're always going to get haters, no matter where you go. I could have just listened to them, but I didn't. I got myself into a really good construction management job, whilst I applied to rejoin the military because I knew for a fact I'd be able to go straight back in. And I was back in the military within about 3 months of being back in the UK. So yeah, it all happened really quickly, but I did that for the benefit of me and for my family, getting a roof over our head, and starting to build on that and build from scratch.
Well, and something that I really want to deep dive into today that you shared with me is this whole becoming the best version of you. And I think that's talked about a lot, especially around January or when people are setting new goals and resolutions and they want to like a level up. But people get like this instant motivation and then they lose it. And so what does that mean to you to be the best version of you? And how can other people step up, level up, let go of their excuses and become that?
Um, it's something I've kind of lived by because of my previous experiences, and that's from sort of like my later times in the army, being a leader and a commander and all that kind of stuff, and being a role model, to being a gym owner, running boot camps, coaching people, being a father, and all that kind of stuff, and constantly surrounding myself with like-minded people that want to lift you up, want to see you win all the time, and just trying to cut negativity out of my life as much as possible, whether that be people, social media friends, even family. And that the whole saying the best version of yourself is something that I've been constantly saying for so much time. And that's why that's what my podcast is called, The Best Version of You. And my Facebook group's called The Best Version of You. And my book that I'm started writing is called The Best Version of You. It's like kind of like my thing. And it's all about being your authentic self, not trying to be somebody else, and just really emphasizing the fact that you cannot be anybody else. Nobody can be you. So like just trying to get yourself just to understand that, and that's even simple things like comparing yourself to influencer on Instagram, who's selling somebody's product that they don't even use themselves. And because I'm sure people that like it, and they've come across like clients and all that kind of stuff where it's a high percentage of them do find themselves wanting to look like somebody else. So it's just trying to like get the person or even the group to hone in on themselves and just ask themselves like, what is your authentic self, and come out as your authentic self. So when I do talks or when I do podcast episodes, it's 100% me. I'd never ever pretend to be or sound like somebody else or something I'm not, just because I think for a split second, or it might woo the audience, might woo that person that I'm speaking to. It's just being honest with yourself, and then, but also being realistic with yourself in terms of like, if you aren't doing something that you should be doing to level up, like be honest with yourself and tell yourself what that is, and actually acknowledge it, identify what the problem is that is stopping you from getting like from here to here. That's just being the best version of yourself. So I always say to the people in the morning, like, we all wake up every morning, like when your feet hit the ground, what drives you? Like, is it you've given yourself 2 minutes to get up and rush out the door with no breakfast? hairs all over the place, not setting mornings to your kids. What drives you is driving. Is your work driving you? Rushing out the door, getting to work, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, or however many hours you do. Coming home, you don't communicate properly. If that's what drives you, then you need to really check in on yourself. But like by making small changes every day, and I don't mean today. Today I'm AJ Roberts. Tomorrow I'm going to be AJ Roberts who's done a skydive, because that's what I need to do to become the best version of myself. It's not like that. It's just little things. It's like just at night time, if you just analyze how your day's gone, literally for a couple of minutes, and go like, well, do you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to make that particular decision differently, and I'm going to make it better. It's just something as simple as that.
Yeah. You touched on so many good points there, so I want to break some of that down a little bit. One thing that you brought up is the whole authenticity and being the best version of you, because I think so many people, you're right, social media is great tools. I mean, that's how we connect it, but it also spins a lot of people down rabbit holes of judgment and comparison and not enoughness and all the self-doubt and all the yuck. And so I've found a fine line of needing to quiet the noise. Like, I go on social to do what I want to do, to comment, to inspire, to uplift, and then I have to step away, because otherwise I can get stuck in the scrolling and the internal dialogue goes downhill for me. Also, something you brought up is being a first-rate version of you instead of a second-rate version of somebody else.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. It is, and it's just...
Yeah. For example, if I try to copy Rachel Hollis or Oprah, I will never be a Rachel Hollis or Oprah. I'm Heather Hakes. And you're AJ Roberts. Don't try to emulate whoever else. Like, I get it, be you. But I think for so many people, because they've been wearing masks for so long, or they feel like they've lost themselves, they don't even know who they are. Where do you begin? I
think a lot of it is to do with how bad people are at communication nowadays. It's like, you've got two parts of social media. You've got like a really amazing part, which you can connect with like-minded people all over the world and fill your news feeds with positivity and look at it like that, like we do. We connected through social media because we both connect with like-minded people who ooze positivity, trying to lift people up, trying to, want to see people win. Don't sit there writing negative comments on people, because it makes you feel good for 10 seconds. Hoping you get a few likes. That's the bad side of social media, which people, find themselves getting into, because they do nothing but surround themselves with that negativity. So instead of surrounding themselves with people in a particular area where they can learn from them people, and surround themselves with smarter people, they surround themselves with people who just spout negativity all the time. And at the same time, and a lot of the time they're communicating with these people, and the communication is all negative. So they never ever feel any confidence in themselves whatsoever. And then they go from that to then following people on Instagram who they want to look like, rather than how they want to be, how they want to feel.
I think the important point there is there's no alignment. You can't have a circle of people that are negative and something you don't want to be a part of anymore while looking at these people's highlight reels and wanting that to. There's no alignment there. And I think the word I would use there is a decision or a choice that you want something different. And sometimes change can be hard, but change is also amazing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it is. And I think with the comparison kind of thing, it can really eat away at people, and that's why I see it all over UK now. You just get so many ladies who just have so much makeup on and so much lip filler, and it's just that's authentically not them. And
wait, is that not attractive?
No, not for me.
Teasing.
It might be for some guys. I'm yet to meet a guy who finds that attractive. But the quick answer from the person is always, well, I'm not doing it for the guys. Well, so that asks me, well, who are you doing it for then? Because clearly there's an issue there where there's a comparison issue, and we see it doesn't help when you've got so many reality TV shows and things like that, again, which people are glued to, and people compare themselves to them all the time. I've got a client of mine, for example, who's overcome breast cancer. She's an amazing woman, and her goal is to compete on a TV show called SAS Who Dares Wins. So it's run by UK Special Forces operatives, or X, and they basically put contestants through their paces for 9 days solid in a really harsh environment. They do not real torture, but basic torture, like mental torture at the end of it. The stuff that would happen on Special Forces selection. And she really wants to put herself through that, but she straight away was following the females that have been on the show on Instagram and instantly comparing herself to them and telling herself she's not enough. And the level of determination to be able to do something like that is like right up here. So she's doing that right up here. So you can just imagine what it's like for high school kids, young adults and stuff like that aren't really doing much with their lives. If instead of like utilizing their time better and improving their self-development and making themselves a better version of themselves, they find themselves far too curious about what everyone else is doing, what everyone else looks like. And that's the real terrible trend we've got. It's the same in the States, Canada, Australia here. It's all about what somebody else is doing.
Okay, so now I want to turn it back to, okay, so let's talk about a process or steps that you can do to become the best version of you. And I think something super important to touch on is this whole, you have to look inward. Stop seeking all this external validation and, spending time going within, whether that's journaling, meditation, and something you touched on is this is small changes. We're not asking people you don't need big, hairy, audacious goals to feel so much better about yourself. So what are those small changes or habits to make or change?
Well, those small changes that you talk about, like within your inner self, they will hands down convert to everlasting big changes. That's the thing. It's just like a little ripple effect. You make small inner changes that ends up just growing and compounding into sort of like big overall changes within your whole life, because you'll change the way you think, you change the way you approach things. I love that saying, like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I think it's the nail on the head, like such a simple but powerful saying. And I've even got my kids thinking it, because it's just so important. So just by even taking a step back and asking yourself, like, what are your standards? How you do one thing is how you do everything. If your standards are getting up in the morning at the last minute, hair all over the place, you only brush your back teeth, you don't eat breakfast, you stroll out the door, like you're in that kind of lazy rush mentality, that's how you apply yourself to your career, your job, and everything else like that. So just by getting up in the morning and having just a small morning routine where it's all about you, not looking at your phone first thing in the morning, getting up in the morning, having hydrating, thinking about what's your plans for the day, make your morning about you before you start reacting to what everybody else is doing, what everyone wants from you. That's a small change, but that makes a massive difference in the whole productivity of your whole day.
Well, and something I think what you're saying there is, by self-care, which I'm super big on, in that morning routine, somebody brought it up to me one time, and I loved his line about take care of yourself in the morning and get in the right headspace, whatever, before your day gets, quote, hijacked. And so it's this sense of being proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah. And that's one big thing I'm really hammering home with my kids at the minute, because all kids have got phones nowadays. And I said to my son, he's texting away to his girlfriend, and an hour and a half later, he's still texting away. I just said, what are you talking about, son? He said, oh, no, we're just talking. I said, I guarantee you what you just texted in the last hour and a half of your time, you could have said in 5 minutes over the phone. And I said, but both of you have probably had nothing chats, as I like to call them, about peripheral rubbish, and then that's an hour and a half of your whole evening taken up. Yes, she's your girlfriend, but what have you actually achieved in that period of time? And it's the same for the morning. Like, you know, I used to be terrible for it. I get as soon as I wake up the morning, phone. Who do I need to reply to? Who's messaged me? You know, what challenges am I going to face today? That was the mindset. Whereas now it's very much like, no, me and my wife go for a walk. We talk about loads of stuff, which is great because you get you suddenly plan things, you get ideas. Come back, have breakfast, hydrate, sort myself out. And then it's not till I'm in my office, probably about 8:30 in the morning, that I actually will look at emails, texts, WhatsApps, all the rest of it, and reply, because, you know, I refuse to be a reactor. I'm a dictator. I'll dictate my time, my day, and everybody should.
Yes. I love that. And that's something I've been working on. And I found myself, because I decided, okay, I don't want to even touch and look at my phone until, for me, it's more about 9 a.m. Get up, go to the gym, do my thing. And then my day starts at 9 a.m. but I find it's a habit. I don't even mean to do it. I wake up, the first thing I do is unlock my phone. And I was like, whoa, this is a habit I have to, and it is a hard habit to break. It's a drug, because it's that instant gratification, and it is hard to break, but it is doable.
100% is doable. And then again, it's the society we live in. There's only certain like positive influence out there, you know, really trying to emphasize this whole concept that life's not about likes and emojis and stuff like that. And it's only because social media and the youth of today, and even adults, being just glued to their phones so much, is being noted as a problem. And, you know, worldwide, it's having a catastrophic effect on people's efficiency, productivity, how poor communicators they are. You know, I'm a big believer it's got, like, and I'm sure you are as well, just how much of a detrimental effect it has on mental health. And that's one subject I'm very, very passionate about. I've lost very good friends to suicide, and I continue to see it happening all over the world, and it's a horrible thing. And a lot of it is down to the poor use of social media and the big, massive knock-on effect it has of low self-esteem. And like, someone asked me on a podcast once, like, if I had an unlimited budget to cure the one thing in the world, what would it be? And I didn't even hesitate. I said low self-esteem. The host was a bit baffled, because he thought, you know, was expecting me to say like cancer or something like that, or poverty, you know, get rid of poverty and stuff like that. But I said, no, self-esteem. I said the amount of people with low self-esteem nowadays in the world is probably more than people who've got cancer, and the amount of the scientific evidence that severe low self-esteem has on a human in terms of future illnesses and conditions, they end up with cancer and other bad illnesses as a result of low self-esteem anyway.
Yeah, I totally believe. And if you are into Dr. Joe Dispenza, there's plenty of documentaries out there. For example, Emotion 2.0 is on Amazon. I don't know if you have that in the UK. And also Heal is on Netflix. And it is so much the power, because if you think about it, teens and early 20s, all these people having cancer, I definitely come from the space that all that negative thinking and stress and all that goes somewhere in the body, and that is what's creating all this disease and illness. And so, yeah, low self-esteem, I'm a big proponent of helping people overcome self-doubt, to know that you are capable of anything you put your mind to. It's just choosing to get out of your own way. And that's just taking the first step. You don't have to go run a marathon. Just take the first step.
Yeah. And it all starts with an idea as well, and then it's taking drastic action. You know, we talked before offline. You know, I've just come back from Sierra Leone, a country that was, you know, riddled with Ebola, although it was actually brought in from another country, but it, you know, crippled the country. Obviously, that's gone. But like all the people I met and spoke to, and that, you know, they're not suffering from cancers. and all the stuff the Western world does. Obviously, there's so many reasons why we get it. Everything from like pesticides to additives in food to lifestyle. But you speak to these amazing people who have nothing, and the children who don't even have electricity. They've got no mobile phones. They've got no Instagram, Snapchats. Most of them is an old tire between about 5 of them, and they just run around pushing it around the street and picking up the odd stick. It looks interesting, and they've all got massive smiles on their faces. It's so good to see. And it's returning from that trip is really, just showed me coming straight back to UK, the pace of life and everything else like that, just how much we don't really tune in and realize how lucky we all are and how easy we all have it. And the platform that we all have to live the best life. Like, we've got a platform here in America, the UK, Australia, anywhere that's got a good, stable economy. We've all got with free education and everything else like that. We've got an amazing platform to do amazing things. And it just, having spent time over there and coming back, it seems so criminal that people just waste it all and spend more time worrying about what Tom, Dick, and Harry's doing on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I have loved about traveling is how much gratitude and appreciation I have for everything that we do have. So, question for you: what is a key takeaway you want listeners to get from this conversation?
I think, going off the subject about being the best version of yourself, is I just want to make the listeners understand that you don't have to suddenly come off this episode and go and book a cage dive with a shark or something like, something crazy. It's not all about that. It's about tuning into yourself for a change, because so many people don't. They constantly rush, work for somebody else, and it's all about other people, and then constantly forget about themselves. And that's when people fall foul of like creating the best life for themselves. So it's about just really tuning in, having a word with yourself basically, and just asking yourself, like, what can I do better? Like, what am I not happy with in my life right now? How can I change it? We're all the commanders of our own lives and like our own destinies, that to speak. Only you can make those changes. Nobody's going to do it for you. And it's the same as opportunity. The opportunities will not come to you. You have to come out of your comfort zone and into your discomfort zone. And that's another way of being the best version of yourself, is by doing that, because it's all about then personal growth. And as you start taking those steps, you'll just see constant propelled ripple effect of positivity towards those goals that you're setting. They don't even have to be big goals. They have to just be small little baby steps to get you from where you are now to where you actually want to be. We're all doing it in our own little ways. It's just tuning yourself into you and how you see that path.
AJ, you speak my language. I have a few rapid fire questions I'd like to ask you to wrap up the interview.
Yeah, sure.
The first one being, what is a quote or motto that you live by?
Definitely what I alluded to earlier, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I love it.
And when you said that, I was going to interject and then I didn't, but now that you brought it up again, that's why I love synchronicities, and if you want to call them coincidences, but I literally just shared that exact line with somebody else today. He was messaging me on Facebook about something, and I get those inboxes a lot. And he kind of more or less, he's like, I'm holding back from who I am because I'm maybe too blunt for some people. And my first response was, well, number one, those aren't your people. And number two, that is exactly what I told him. How you do anything is how you do everything. So it's like if you're playing small in one area, you're probably playing small all around.
Yeah, and it's all about your standards and raising your bar all the time and stuff like that. And the military is a prime example. When I had all my guys on parade, for example, If there was a guy who had really dirty boots, like, and because he couldn't be bothered, I always say to him, like, if that's how you're going to turn up here, that tells me that you don't clean your weapon properly, which is what saves your life.
Yeah,
Because if that's your standards,
I love that. Something to live by. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend?
I'm reading a book called Time and How to Best Spend It. My wife bought it for me for Christmas, so I'm actually been reading that at the moment. It's actually really interesting. It's got loads of good like exercises and stuff like that. I definitely recommend it for people who multitask all the time and find they're stressed out and they actually haven't really achieved anything. It's actually a really good book to get hold of.
All right. Final question for you. What advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self, don't go out with a girl called Donna. No. What would I give my younger self? I definitely, I'd definitely say just always be 100% you, your authentic self. Like never ever don't go off the journey of being somebody else. Like always be you.
Great note to end on. AJ, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your wisdom.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been absolutely great. Thank you.